How's it going, my fellow shiny Pokemon? Shiny Snorlax here, bringing you guys Pokemon Showdown replay. I'm sorry that I have to resort to this. I am forced because Showdown's fucking up. But other than that, team preview will be down in the description below. So yeah, let's get the fight started. Opponent leads up with this Starmie. I lead off with what I'm gonna do. Opponent brings out a Tipple down. I go for a Sword Dance. And I go for another Sword Dance. Opponent goes for an Earthquake. I know I can survive it, so I kept on staying in. I go for a King Shield just to heal up a bit. Opponent goes for another Earthquake. And I go for another Sword Dance, and opponent just goes for a Whirlwind. And switches me out into my Gengar. I go for a Shadow Ball. Hippo down takes it real well. And opponent goes for a Nice Swing, and I take it really well also. I go for a Shadow Ball, getting some good damage on the Hippo down. And opponent slacks off to heal up a bit. Opponent brings out his Lucario, and I go for a Shadow Ball, getting massive damage. And opponent's Balloon pops. Opponent switches out into his Mavile, and intimidates me and gets my attack lowered. I go for a Shadow Ball, almost take it out. And opponent Mega Evolves, goes for a Second Punch, and takes out my Gengar. I bring out my Tyranitar, and I switch out and bring out my Armor Titan. Opponent brings out a Simple down, and I go for a Toxic just to get it on. And opponent goes for a Nice Swing, barely doing anything. And opponent switches out right into its Rotom Heat, and I set up one layer of spikes. And I switch out into my walls, and opponent goes for a Thunder Wave, and paralyzing me. Opponent switches out into its Hippo down, and I switch out into my Armor Titan, predicting to switch out into a Hippo down. Opponent switches out into its Starmie, and I set up one more layer of spikes. I switch it out into what's I gonna do. Opponent goes for a Side Shock, and barely gets anything. Opponent switches out into its Hippo down, and I go for a Sword Dance. And I go for a King Shield just to patrol. Opponent goes for a Sack Off, gets practically fully healed. And I switch out into my Armor Titan, and opponent goes for an Earthquake, but doesn't affect me. Opponent switches out into its Rotom Heat. I go for my final layer of spikes. Opponent goes for a Volt Switch, and switches out into its Lucario. I go for a Toxic, not expecting the Volt Switch. And opponent goes for a Extreme Speed, barely getting anything off on me, and I go for a Brave Bird, taking out the Lucario. And opponent brings out its Rotom Heat. I goes for another Volt Switch and takes out my Armor Titan. Opponent brings out its Gengar. I bring out what's I gonna do. Opponent brings out its Hippo down, probably predicting a Shadow Sneak. And I go for a Sword Dance, predicting switch. I go for another Sword Dance, and opponent goes for a Sack Off. And I go for a King Shield just to patrol, and opponent goes for another Whirlwind, and switches me into my walls. I go for a Seismic Toss, getting some chip damage in. Opponent goes for an Earthquake, getting quite a bit of damage on me. And opponent gets very hurt from that Toxic. I switch out to my Wub Wub. And opponent switches out into its Gengar. I go for a Draco Meteor, hoping it'll take it out, but it does not. And Gengar goes for a Dazzling Gleam, but I survive it. And I go for a Draco Meteor, taking out the Gengar. The opponent brings out its Rotom Heat. I basically keep on going for Draco Meteors and leaving it out for Death Adder. Opponent goes for an Overheat and gets its special attack lowered. So I switch on to what's I gonna do. Opponent goes for a Thunder Wave, paralyzing me, but I go for a Sword Dance, not caring about it. So opponent goes for an Overheat, getting some damage in, and gets a special attack lowered again. I go for another Sword Dance, not caring at all, and opponent switches out into a Tipple down. And I go for another Sword Dance, getting it maxed out. And I go for a Shadow Sneak, taking out the Hippo down. And opponent brings out its Rotom Heat, and I'm paralyzed. The opponent goes for Overheat, and now what's I gonna do? Gets taken down. I bring out my Sand, and opponent goes for a Thunder Wave, paralyzing me, and I'm paralyzed. I cannot move. And opponent goes for Overheat, barely getting anything. And I go for a Crunch, taking out the Rotom Heat. And opponent brings out its Starmie, and opponent goes for a Hydro Pump, takes out my Sand. and I bring out my walls. The opponent goes for a side shock, getting quite a bit of damage on me, and I go for a soft boil just to control what's going to happen. The opponent goes for another side shock, and I go for a seismic toss, taking out the Starmie. The opponent brings out its Mavile and gets taken out from the spikes. So yeah, that was a pretty decent battle in my opinion. May have been long, but it was pretty cool. Alright, so like, comment, and subscribe, become a shiny Pokemon, and I'll see you next time.